Welcome back, gentlemen. This is the tight end video. I apologize, this got delayed quite a few times. There were some trades out the ass over the past few days, especially involving the tight ends. So we kind of had to keep pushing this back to make sure I didn't release a video and it getting outdated like 10 minutes later. Like it almost happened, thanks to a good buddy. Alrighty, let's just get right into it. Coming in at number 12, I have PMC Wagner. Now, I really just don't get the upside here. This tight end room is just terrible. Yeah, I really don't see the upside here. Moving on. Coming in at number 11, we have MILF. Of course, it's MILF. Who else would it be? Coming in at number 11, we got MILF. He's got Luke Musgrave and Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry might not even be the full-time starter for New England. Luke Musgrave, he has an arguable upside for Green Bay. I don't see it being that high, though, even if he's better than Yahoo's projecting him to be, which I really don't think so. I really don't see an upside here for this tight end room. You could probably get better people off free agents, to be honest. This tight end room is just terrible. Sorry, Johnny. Coming in at number 10, we have Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled. This is becoming a common trend, isn't it? Hey, at least you're not last. His tight end room consists of Sean Laporta, rookie tight end for Detroit. I don't even know how to pronounce this dude's name. Let's take a look at it. We got Chigoziem Okonkwo, and then we got Tyler Higbee. So Sean Laporta is going to be a rookie for Detroit. People think he could be the next TJ Hawkinson. I personally have my doubts. They've had younger tight ends go in there and try to replicate the same thing, and unfortunately they use them as more blocking tight ends as their starter. I don't think there will be too much out of Laporta. I'm not saying to drop him or anything if you're scrambled and wiggle-waggled, but I don't think the upside's going to hit. For Chigoziem, I actually think he could be a bright player this year compared to where people are expecting him to be. Because you got the worst offensive line in football. I think they're going to be needing to go and rely on a lot of checkdowns. So I think I could actually see Chigoziem becoming a pretty solid player compared to what people are expecting him to be. But with that being said, that would be for a backup. I don't think he would be a great starter. And then going into Tyler Higbee, I don't see him being great if Cooper Kupp is able to stay healthy. But in the scenario that Cooper Kupp goes down for an injury for weeks, or so let's say the increasingly likely scenario happens where he misses multiple weeks or he misses the whole season, Tyler Higbee suddenly becomes a very usable tight end one, especially if Matthew Stafford is able to stay healthy. He could actually bump Scrambled and Wiggle-Waggled up this list a few spots if the stars align, but you're kind of hoping for a lot there. Overall, you're better than MILF in PMC Wagner's hopeless tight end core. And overall, you got number 10. Coming in at number 9, we got J-Bay's Fantastic Team, who has Evan Ingram and Jake Ferguson. I think Evan Ingram's going to have a fallback year compared to last year, just because they got Calvin Ridley, they got Tank Bigsby. I think they're going to be relying on the tight end use a lot less than they were last year. Ferguson could be a solid backup for a tight end, I guess. Maybe they use him kind of like Dalton Schultz. I think he might be a little bit better than who's projecting him to be, but that's about it in terms of the upside. Overall, I'm just not a fan of this tight end room compared to everyone else. It's nothing good. It's a little bit on the bad side, but it technically has upside, so it's not too far down. Coming in at number 8, we got Gotham Troublemakers, who has David Njoku and Dalton Schultz. Now, David Njoku, I think, is going to be another guy just like Evan Ingram with the addition of Elijah Moore and Jerome Ford for Cleveland. I think he's actually going to have a step back. Deshaun Watson's never been known for being a big tight end quarterback. Njoku, if I'm not mistaken, actually started lowering in his stats when Deshaun Watson took over for Jacoby Brissett last year. Overall, I'm just not a fan. However, I do like your backup in Dalton Schultz. I think with C.J. Stroud having the IQ of Evan, I think he could potentially just rely on Schultz for a lot of checkdowns. Look at him as his main target, especially with his number one receiver being Robert Woods. I don't really see that going too well. So I think Schultz might end up actually being your starter by the end of the year. But either way, I can't really rank you much higher for Dalton Schultz. His upside alone, I don't think Njoku's going to do too well for you. Coming in at number 7, we got Pussy. And he has some new weapons thanks to one of the trades I mentioned earlier. He has former starter Dalton Kincaid, who's now probably going to be riding his bench for the year, and Kyle Pitts. He had just acquired Kyle Pitts through a trade with Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled, which is part of the reason why Scrambled and Wiggle Waggled is all the way down at 10 and Pussy is now at 7. Overall, this is kind of like what you were with your previous tiers, where you were right in the middle of the pack, where your team could have a lot of upside that could shoot you up this list in further rankings, or they could take a shit and drop you down the list. As you mentioned whenever we were talking about the trades, a whole 75 points last year. I understand he got hurt, but even when he was playing, he was really not doing anything, and that was with Marcus Mariota, a guy who primarily has been targeting tight ends such as Delaney Walker, for example, throughout his entire career. Which, Kyle Pitts does have the upside to be a top 3 tight end, maybe higher depending on if injuries fall in the rankings. But overall, I'm not really too big on him. I think he definitely has the upside to hit there, but you kind of need a big light to match that one up, or a big match to light that one up. Dalton Kincaid, he's a rookie, obviously, for Buffalo, first-round pick. I think they very much intend on using him. However, I think in an offense where they have James Cook, they have Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Josh Allen, who's going to be scrambling the whole time. I think Dalton Knox is going to be taking maybe around half of his snaps. You can only hope Kincaid gets more than that. I think it's not going to be too reliable, but he does have upside, I guess. Overall, I think Pitts is going to be the thing that makes or breaks this tight end room, which is why it's close to the middle of the pack. But I personally don't see it working out, so I have it below average, so I have it at the 7 spot. Coming in at number 6, we got Karen's husband. Karen's husband has Pat Freiermuth, Greg Dulcich, and Cole Kmet. I'm a fan of Pat Freiermuth, with the exception of the fact that the Steelers just drafted rookie tight end Darnell Washington. I think he'll be used as more of a red zone guy, which could take away Freiermuth's touchdowns, which is going to hurt him significantly compared to how he was last year. However, marching down the field, I think Pat Freiermuth will do just about as fine as he did in previous years, where he was getting yards, catches, I think he'll do just fine in terms of that. I just think he'll have the downgrade because of the lack of end zone targets. Keep in mind, this is about middle of the pack, so I don't have a problem with Pat Freiermuth being your tight end 1, but overall, I don't think he's anything crazy. I actually do like Greg Dulcich as your backup tight end, especially with Denver losing Jerry Jeudy for the first few weeks. I could see them using Dulcich a lot. They also cut Albert Okonkwo, if I'm not mistaken on that name. They cut him, so that proves that this is Dulcich's backfield. Overall, when it comes to the tight end, it's just a matter of how much Denver's going to end up using him. I think for a tight end, you might have one of the best backup tight ends in the league, though. Cole Kmet, as a Bears fan, he's hopeless. I'm convinced the Bears will never try to use him properly. He's more of a blocker tight end. Sometimes he gets targets, but it's not too common, especially with the addition of DJ Moore and these 7 running backs we have. I can't see them using Cole Kmet too much this year. Overall, you have some solid backups for where you are, though. Coming in at number 5, this is where we're starting to get into the good tight ends. We have big yawners with Darren Waller. Now, I've always liked Darren Waller. I always thought he was a top 3 tight end, along with Andrews, Kittle, and Kels. Well, a top 4 tight end in terms of fantasy. But his injuries are just through the roof. He gets hurt almost every year. It's hard to ignore. Plus, you don't have a backup. But I'm not really ranking you too much against that. But overall, it's worth mentioning. I think if Waller can stay healthy, he could be one of the best tight ends in the league, maybe even better than guys like George Kittle this year. It's possible, but overall, you're really hoping he doesn't get hurt, or your tight end room's going to be hurting for certain. But he definitely does have upside with Daniel Jones being the quarterback. I don't think Daniel Jones is anything special with airing the ball out. He's always been more of a scrambler. But who knows? They don't have a receiving core, so Waller will, in naturality, be their top guy to throw the ball to whenever he's looking downfield. So overall, I got you at number 5 in the good tier. Coming in at number 4, we got Booty Basher. Booty Basher is where we're starting to get into the good tight ends that I don't really have any problems with. He's got Dallas Goedert, who if you've had him last year, I don't know how many of you actually had him last year, but whenever he came back from his injury, I believe he outranked people like Pat Freiermuth. Darren Waller wasn't really playing at that point. He was one of the top scoring tight ends in the league. That's pretty much my point here. TJ Hawkinson was getting on and off of injuries at the ending of last year. And you had Dallas Goedert just outscoring people like Mark Andrews, I remember. He is probably one of the most consistent tight ends in the league. You might have a issue with all these running backs coming in, like DeAndre Swift, for example, as you'll see right underneath him. But overall, I don't think it'll be that much of an issue for Goddard. I think he'll have another really good year if he can stay healthy. That's a problem with almost all these tight ends is all of them are just riddled with injuries. It's going to be very hard to trust a lot of them, you know. But overall, I like Dallas Goddard. He's a solid tight end. I think he'll finish as one of the best tight ends in fantasy. We got Gerald Everett as well as a backup. He's a really good backup. There is one problem I have with him, though, and that's that the Chargers have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen coming back, plus they drafted Quentin Johnston. So I don't think he'll have as good of a year as he did last year. However, for a backup in fantasy, I think he will be solid for you. We got Jawan Johnson. I think for a tight end 3, that's really good, but other than that, I'm not as big of a fan of him as people on Yahoo and people picking him up are. Um, Overall, I think Carr, there is some upside, though, with Carr using tight ends. You know, he made Darren Waller pretty much who he is in Las Vegas now. Overall, he does have upside, especially when Kamara's out, but I think as soon as Kamara comes back, I don't see Jawan Johnson being fantasy reliable. Plus, with Taysom Hill there, he's probably going to be taking a lot of those snaps at tight end anyway. Plus, I think they re-signed Jimmy Graham. I don't know how much they're planning on actually using him, though. Overall, solid tight end core. Number 4. Coming in at number 3, speaking of injury prone, we got Toxic Zenpai and George Kittle. Now, Toxic Zenpai has George Kittle, and he just acquired Zach Ertz out of a trade with Pussy. I honestly think Zach Ertz, you could probably cut him at this point. I do not see them using Zach Ertz much, if at all. You know, I could be wrong on that. That's a bold take. But when Zach Ertz, whenever he was playing with Murray in past years with DeAndre Hopkins and all that, he was great, don't get me wrong. But he's just getting older. Arizona just drafted a tight end. I think they're going to plan on using him more. You know, I don't think they're going to try to go too crazy with Ertz, so I don't really think he's that crazy great. But you know what? For a backup tight end, if you feel like keeping him, he might end up panning out for you, but I don't really think he's worth much. George Kittle is the main event of this tight end room. With Brock Purdy stepping in at quarterback, George Kittle actually became their number 1 target share guy, outpassing guys like Christian McCaffrey even, who's supposed to be the best running back in fantasy this year. But like I said, I've been warning people about Christian McCaffrey all year. I'm not saying Christian McCaffrey is going to be bad by any means, but I do think he'll take a step back because of guys like George Kittle. So I really do like George Kittle this year if he can stay healthy. That's why I got you at number 3 at one of the best spots. I think you could be bumped up a little bit on this list if San Francisco didn't have so many weapons they get this ball to, like Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. I kind of say this thing about the 49ers offense in every video. They just have too many mouths to feed over there. Plus, he has the injury list history, so overall I got you at 3 Toxic. Coming in at number 2, we got Rick Tatership, who just has TJ Hawkinson, who does also have injuries, a list of injuries, kind of like George Kittle. But I do think that he won't have as much competition going in there. He has Justin Jefferson. But other than that, you could argue Jordan Addison. I think Jordan Addison will take a step up this year, but overall I don't think it'll take too much away from Hawkinson. Because Minnesota lost Dalvin Cook. Their run game isn't going to be nearly as much as it was last year. Cousins is going to be needing someone as a check down guy for most of the year. So I think it makes sense for TJ Hawkinson to be as high up as he is on this list. I think he has so much upside. He might even finish better than number 1's tight end. It's very possible, but overall I think Hawkinson is a steal in fantasy this year, if he can stay healthy, that is. Coming in at number 1, we got Homeland Security. We got Mark Andrews here, and this is you know, I love Mark Andrews this year. I think now that Lamar Jackson's starting to get healthier, Mark Andrews is starting to get healthier. Don't get me wrong, he's still very injury prone. Both of them are still very injury prone and could get hurt at any point. But when Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson are both able to stay healthy, you'll see Mark Andrews contesting with that other tight end that we don't talk about for being the best tight end in all of fantasy, regardless of what the numbers say with the drop-off. It is very possible that he finishes as the tight end number 1 this year. I don't think he will for sure. I am worried about the sheer amount of weapons the Ravens have, but overall Lamar has loved running backs tight ends throughout his entire career, so I think Andrews will still remain very good. On the flip side, I'm not a fan of any of those receivers, though. I think none of them really stand out compared to like Mark Andrews. And that's the list, fellas. I hope you enjoyed. You know, I still really don't get the upside behind PMC. Not sure what he was thinking there. That was pretty stupid of him. I'll try to release the kicker video shortly after this one. Enjoy.